Okay, so this is our HDLA program orientation presentation, and it's a description of our program philosophy and the design behind our program. A little bit of background information about HDLA. As you know, it's a rural agricultural community, and it's becoming more and more of maybe a bedroom community for San Jose and the Bay Area. But it's also Central Coast, California, with a deep Mexican American heritage. When we started the school, a task force was hired, or not hired, but put together to look into what the program was going to look like. That was back in 2006 and 2007 when our community answered to a survey that they wanted to see some bilingual or dual language programs within Hollister. Because of that, the task force went out and they researched programs, and they came up with the idea for the Hollister Dual Language Academy, went back and presented it to the board, and their proposition or their proposal was accepted, and our school began. So it started in 2007 and 2008 with two kinder and two first grade classes. It was built on a model of 50-50, which means 50% of the day would be in English and 50% of the day would be Spanish, because it was politically motivated in a way. This way, if you have a 50-50 program, all students, regardless if they're English dominant or Spanish dominant, have a really good ability to transfer information as they learn the second language. We have grown into a school-wide dual language program from that baby seed of just the two kinder and the two first grade classes, and we're now a TK through eighth grade program with 900. I think we have almost 950 this year, and we'll grow by 50 students per year. We have 2 more years of growth to go, so we're looking at being a student population of probably over 1,000 or close to it by the time we're at full capacity, and that will be in 2 years. There are many beliefs about the um, ethnicity or the students that are selected or that go to HDLA. The truth about that is that we have a 90% of the students that go to HDLA are Hispanic, 6% are Anglo, and 100% of the students at our school get free and reduced lunch. When the school was started, it was based on a vision, and it was that they wanted to create a program that provided academic excellence in two language. The mission of the Hollister Dual Language Academy, really, it was everything that was at the core of what they did. The goal was for every student to become bilingual, biliterate, and bicultural through a rigorous academic program that developed a language proficiency in both English and Spanish while fostering global competency, respect for diversity, and love for learning. The educational program was designed to provide a safe, secure, and supportive learning environment for the entire community, students, staff, and families. So if you go through, and as I'm presenting these slides, I'll bring it back to this because this is at the core of every single thing that we're doing and that we do at the Dual Language Academy. First, I'll start with the program structure. So the program structure, like I said, is a 50-50 in the TK through eighth grade in all subjects. For sixth and seventh grade, we have English language arts. History is in English, science and Common Core math are in Spanish. For eighth grade, English language arts and Common Core math or algebra are in English, where science and history is in Spanish. And in our middle school electives, we also have ELD for redesignation. We have a class called SLD for Spanish grammar and literature. Our SLD class is actually equivalent to Spanish 1 at San Benito High School, but it's broken into different sections. And so you would get part of it in your sixth grade year, part of it in your seventh grade year, and then finish it in your eighth grade year. We also have Capturing Kids' Hearts Leadership and Yearbook and Student Council. PE and music are the only two classes that are not taught in Spanish. Both of those classes are usually taught by non-bilingual teachers and therefore in English. So as we build our classes in the elementary school, which is the TK through fifth grade, we build our classes so 1/3 of the learners are Spanish speakers only. 1/3 of them are truly bilingual, which means they're strong Spanish and English speakers, and 1/3 of them are English speakers, meaning 1/3 are learning English, 1/3 are bilingual, and 1/3 are learning Spanish. So we have English learners, bilinguals, and Spanish learners, but everyone in the school is a language learner. What happens is, oops, I'll go back to that for a minute. When we have a classroom that's built in this way, then you can see where where the strength is. So when we're in a Spanish class, this student is going to be this first English learner here is going to be our strong student because she's going to be the one that will support everyone as they're learning Spanish. When we're coming to classes and we need someone that can do the transference and help students understand and connect with what they learned in one part of the day with the other, our bilingual models are perfect for that. And then our English speakers are going to lead the class in our English classes. So we have strength from our students in all different areas depending on the language that they bring from home, which gives a lot of value to our students coming into the program that are coming from Spanish speaking households because we need them for their support in our language classes, especially in our Spanish classes. So we try to build equity by learning about our differences and our similarities, and we pull culture into our education in many, many ways. So for Christina, she's seen it, and Mrs. Armenta has seen it too. We do a big Day of the Dead celebration where we learn about our Central America and South American countries that celebrate Day of the Dead and why they do that. Each class prepares an altar and learns about the traditions. And then families are key in helping us put this together. So our curriculum isn't just based on what the book says that we're supposed to be doing according to whatever textbook we're following at the time. It's more than that. We're building in cultural awareness. We're building in information and knowledge about other countries and what they do and how they're different and how they're alike. Equity also means giving students experiences that they might not otherwise have. So we partner with Pinnacle's National Monument, and unfortunately, since we're in distance learning mode, I don't know if these trips are going to be happening. But Pinnacles has been pivotal in providing this piece for us. So they do a science camp, an overnight science camp for our kids as they get older. They do a field trip for our second graders, and then they have them come back again as fourth graders, and then they have the overnight trip. And the whole time that they do these programs for them, they build each trip builds on the year that they went before. And it really teaches them how to become environmental stewards and how to appreciate the environment that they have around them, as well as, so we're talking about culture, but we're also talking about appreciating their environment and where we are. Leadership and support. So the program has strong, effective, and knowledgeable leadership. Monique made this slide. And and I would go back to that. And that when we're saying about the leadership, and this is an important piece, that our principal has 20 years of experience in dual language, knows it very much, and has been in several different programs. So it's important that when you're in a program such as this, that your leaders or the people that are supporting you have that background so that they understand when you say something's hard or students aren't understanding, that you're not just coming from a monolingual program, but you're coming from this dual language program that has layers of complexity because of um, the added complexities that come with a dual language program. And so that is one of the things that we have in our program. And the other part of the program that's important to notice is the instruction. So the instructional methods are derived from research-based principles of dual language education and ensure fidelity to the model. So the model, and you'll hear that a lot of times, the model of the program is crucial to the success of what we're doing, and we're going to go into that. The first part is the curriculum, which teams of teachers come together to develop and revise high quality curriculum that can be used equally in English and Spanish classes. It's standard based and it promotes attainment of goals of the dual language education program. When I say standards based, it's not dummied down in one language or another. We try to maintain as much as possible those grade level expectations for each one of the classes, regardless of the classes in English or in Spanish. And the curriculum effectively integrates technology, which is kind of cute right now because that's all we're doing. But before, when we were in class learning, technology was an important piece of the curriculum for our students. We have a very distinct separation of languages. And so in English class, English only is spoken. And in Spanish class, Spanish only is spoken. So that the students clearly know when they're in English class, they switch like flipping a switch of a light to English. And when they're in Spanish class, They're switching over to Spanish. One of the models or instructional strategies that we use is called mirroring. And mirroring is when the classrooms look the same. And so this isn't going to be an issue so much this year, but it will become something that you work toward probably next year, because with distance learning, I don't even know if this is going to be possible. But mirroring is one of our it's one of our key practices, and let me explain a little bit about that. So two classes are partnering. You have an English teacher and a Spanish teacher. What you want to do in that classroom is set up the classroom so that everything in the room is placed in the same location. You want your desk in about the same location. You want your cabinets, or if the students have to get supplies from the classroom, such as scissors, papers, a pencil sharpener, these items you would want to be in about the same place, an approximation of the same place. Teachers, when they're mirroring, they'll do their walls exactly the same color. And if you see in these two classrooms, this one right here and this one right here, they were doing a unit on tigers, and you can see the picture in both languages. One is English and one is Spanish, of the tigers, and then the work that the students did in that language. So this class may only be displaying the green group's work, and this one may be displaying the yellow group's work. But the teachers will go back and forth and display, what your classroom could be displaying both of your students' work in the same classroom. That's fine. It doesn't have to be that only the English teacher displays the yellow group and the Spanish teachers displays the green group. You go back and forth and displaying your work, but you have a classroom that has everything in about the same place. So what happens in my experience with this, when I was a second grade teacher in this program, is that when my students would come into classroom, I'd ask them to sit down on the rug. They would go sit down on my rug, which was the same place that Maestra Gomez had her rug. So we would go sit down in the same exact spot on the rug, and the students knew where that was. When I would go to my calendar wall and point to the calendar, it was in the same spot as Maestra Gomez's calendar. So everything we did was in the same spot. And what that does for the student is it creates a situation where they know where everything is. They're going into a different room, but it doesn't feel so much like a different environment. The only thing that's really changing is the language of instruction and who is presenting that instruction. So, see, it creates this security for students because they don't feel like there's two so very different places, but it's one place they're familiar with and two languages that they're doing it with. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. So mirroring, one of our signature practices. The next practice is bridging. And bridging is defined by Beeman and Urau as instructional a moment in dual language learning when two languages are brought together, guiding students to analyze and contrast the language and transfer the content learned in one to the other. So bridging is planned for, supported, it's thematic studies and units, it's about transfer and using both languages to make sense. It's not random or a daily time. It's not simply translation or vocabulary. It's not flip flopping or code switching, and it's not SLD or ELD. Bridging is what happens when our students attend school and they go to one class in the morning. Let's see if there's another slide here that might help me with this. Okay, let's see. I'll go back to this one. So in our students are, as you know, your elementary students are broken up into two sections. And one group is called the yellow group and the other group is called the green group. So in the morning on the first day, the students will go to either their green group teacher or they'll go to their yellow group teacher. So let's just say this day the green group went to their Spanish teacher and the yellow group went to their English teacher, such as what happens on the very first day of school during the first week of school. Now it becomes half day or an approximation of half day. At that point, the students switch. Your English student or your green group who is with the Spanish teacher is now going to go to the English teacher. Your yellow group who was with your English teacher is now going to go with the Spanish teacher. So the students are going to switch from one teacher to the other. The students are switching from one language to the other at half day every day. Now, during this time, that's when the bridging happens. So your students have had a lesson with you already in the morning about, let's say, math. And during the math lesson, you did something with numbers and addition. And you may have done a math lesson that involved 2 plus 2 is 4. And you drew a model of 2 plus 2 is 4. And you explained the vocabulary that goes with addition. And maybe you talked about add-ins. Maybe you talked about sum. And then after that, they may have had a lesson that went in their math book about that. And they did whatever page they had to do with that lesson. In the afternoon, they're going to go to their next class. Now, their next class would be in the opposite language. So, in the opposite language, the teacher is going to say, "Oh, this morning you did your math lesson on adding. I bet you did. Or do you remember the vocabulary you learned this morning? Well, here's what it looks like in Spanish." And they might go over the vocabulary for sum and add ins and what they talked about in the morning. And then say, now this afternoon, they're not going to repeat the morning because nothing ever gets repeated. They take that information, they're going to push it forward. And when I say push it forward, now they're going to take that information, they're going to build it. So now you're going to take what you learned this morning, and I want you to build models of addition for me. Show me what 2 plus 3 would look like in a model. I want you to take these cubes and go to your desk and show me what that looks like. Now, what would the sum be? So in doing that, what happens is those teachers are building on what happened in the morning in the afternoon, and they're tying in all that language. And I can say, as a mother of 2 daughters who are graduates of the Dual Language Academy, it is an amazingly simple way for students to learn language because they immediately make the connection. If they're not strong in the morning language, in the afternoon, they're going to get it. It's going to pick them up. And then the next morning, when they go back to that language they're not strong in, suddenly they're going to understand because they had that afternoon instruction. And so what happens is kind of this fluid, sort of back and forth instruction between English and Spanish, where the students learn it in their morning language, and in the afternoon, they are solidifying that concept. The same thing happens with language arts. So maybe you read a story, and in the morning, you read a story and you talked about the character. In the afternoon, you may review the story one more time and then write a character analysis. So you're taking whatever happened in the morning and you're pushing it into the afternoon. So with a model such as ours, there are 2 teachers in every cohort. So 2 teachers are sharing 2 groups of students. Students switch every day. Each week they start with the opposite language. So they may be in week 1, they start maybe switch in English, they start in English, but in week 2 they would start in Spanish. And then in week 3 they would be back to English. And then in week 4 they would start in Spanish. So even the classes that they start with is going to alternate. And that way they never get that core morning instruction in one language. It's always switching back and forth. It's a rigorous curriculum, and the bridging allows every student access to the material in their strongest language. So it supports L1, it supports L2. Everyone is getting instruction in a language that they're familiar with. Are there any questions? It's a lot of talking for me. Okay, ready? Let's go on. Okay, so bridging allows students to connect area knowledges and skills from one language to another. So here's an example that was built.
Jen?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Excuse
Yes.
me.
You actually scared me.
Sorry, I caught you.
Yeah.
Mahalia had her hand up, but you couldn't see her.
No, I can't see. That's why I said, oh, Mahalia, you weren't here for the first part of the presentation, but I said, if you have a question, just go ahead and unmute and ask away.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Now, my question is, with Spanish and English, they both have different alphabetic principles. So,
Yeah.
especially for the primary level, um, how do you kind of tie those two together, like the
Okay.
phonics, because they're, 2 different alphabetic principles.
Mahalia, you're right on. You're exactly right. And so there are some things that don't bridge. And one of them is the phonics does not bridge. So in a matter of fact, the way you teach English with the isolation of the letters and the sounds is completely different than the way that you would teach Spanish with the syllables. Because in Spanish, you usually do the mame, mu, 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 and you do it in syllables, where in English, you're or so it's a little bit different in that terms. And also, so the phonics, the spelling is very different, and the grammar is very different. So we take some of these core concepts that can be bridged, like math, and we bridge that. We take the core concepts like story, understanding what they've read, comprehension of literature, writing, that can all be bridged. But other areas, grammar cannot, and spelling cannot. So that was a
Some
really good question.
some
Yes.
things, like if we're getting really sophisticated, which I'm not sure many of us are at that level, but there are ways to bridge or to make connections so that there are many consonants that are the same in these two languages, but and I think the teachers, do deal with that, but overall it's taught separately because the introduction of the sequence of the sounds and such happen in a different, very completely different way than Spanish. I mean, in English. So, but
Mm-hmm.
it's amazingly doesn't really throw the kids. They seem to be okay. They see that they learn it in both, or they learn each, and then pretty soon then they make those connections on their own many times if they don't have any kind of big learning differences. So, excuse
Mm-hmm.
me, Jen, I'll butt out now.
No, that was great. Thank you for adding that. And I agree. I know when Carol and I were teaching, we took that one piece out entirely out of our bridging equation, and we said, okay, during this one time when we're doing phonics, I'll do it this way, you do it that way, because I would teach. Sometimes I would teach a letter, and sometimes I would teach a letter, and it would help her teach that letter. Sometimes she would teach a letter, and then the kids would get to my class, and it would confuse them because we're doing the same letter and they have really different rules. So we just decided, all right, we're going to just go on our own on that. But using those together too, when they can come together, is really powerful.
I just wanted to piggyback a little bit on what you both said, and that is that a lot of strong phonics programs, you do start with those consonants that only say one thing. And so you're teaching N and M and T and S. And then lastly, you're teaching the vowels, because every student at our school will tell you Spanish is so much easier. The vowels only say one thing. And so they'll pick it up really fast in Spanish. It's when they globalize and they try to spell is when we start seeing that. And we don't see it as because we work in that, we don't look at it as, oh, there's a learning problem here because look, they can't, whatever. No, we look with grace at what they've learned. They're very strong in one language first, quite often, and then they catch up in the other. And sorry, Monique, I know that's one of your things you like to say, but it is very true. Watching the kids, they will excel in one versus the other. And for so many people, even as a second language learner in Spanish, give me Spanish. I know what all the letters say. So, but we kind of ladder, piggyback, and they learn it.
And interesting enough, when I had my reading intervention groups, I would jump into my Spanish class. Students' reading was higher in my Spanish
Mhm.
first grade classes than it was in my English classes because of the phonetics, because it's so much easier. All you have to do is get them reading those syllables and you got it. With the English, there's so much more. So, okay, let's go ahead and onward we go. Strategies. So support the attainment of the 3 core goals of the dual language education. All right, so one of the things that we know is important to look at are the strategies that we use to help students make these connections and to understand what it is that we're teaching. And so this is a piece that you will be introduced to. You will see it throughout your time, although I'm not going to go into it right now. And that's strategies that we use that make input comprehensible. That you can take something, for example, breaking complex information into smaller pieces so students can understand it, or use a variety of pre-reading, pre-writing activities to make language and content more accessible to students, or making frequent use of comprehension checks. These are all things that help our students, because we remember everyone in this program is a language learner. No one in this program is stigmatized as being one and only. Everyone here is a language learner, and they all need these strategies to help them understand what they're learning in class. And so this is a great checklist that we use. We use it when we go into classrooms and we do observations, although it's not part of our official observation cycle, it is a piece that we look at and consider when we're looking at our program and figuring out how we can build on what we do to make it better. And that means just looking at those strategies that our teachers are using to help students understand and learn language easily. One of the strategies that we use, two of the strategies that we use that we love the most are GLAD, which and thinking maps. And we had a training for GLAD about 3 years ago where everybody was trained. It was an amazing program where you learn so many strategies that help students learn language, graphs and pictorials and chants and movements that help students learn and make learning comprehensible and simple. And it's also something that lends very well to transference and to bridging. Thinking maps do the same thing. And most of us have been trained in thinking maps, although I think as we get new teachers, we're going to find that some of them may not have been trained. And thinking maps is another way that we can organize our thinking in a way that we can break down a concept, a large concept, into smaller pieces or make connections between pieces and then use those maps as a basis for writing. So the thinking maps is another way that we take language and we break it into something comprehensible. Another piece of the program is a social and global competency, which is such a big piece of what we do. And I talked a little bit about the studies that Day of the Dead and focusing on other cultures. We jump in and we do celebrations and we celebrate what other cultures are celebrating. Sometimes it's Chinese New Year's, which is what you see in this middle slide right here. And it's not just about jumping in and having a celebration for the sake of having a celebration, but we look at the calendar and how it's different from our own and what their celebration looks like and why they celebrate the way that they do that is so different from our New Year celebration. And the end of the year culminates with an enormous celebration called International Week. It is an extravaganza for sure. Almost a week long or 4 days of presentations where classes go in and they will study one culture and then they come back and they do a presentation for their parents about whatever country they studied. And usually the students will present information that they learned about the country and then do a performance related to that. Typically a dance, but it could sometimes be a song. And we've also seen plays done. So International Week is something you're going to hear about. Our International Week was canceled last year. We couldn't do it with distance learning. And I have to say, I'm expecting that it might not happen again this year, but then we'll see it again next year, depending on where we are with the coronavirus and our ability to have large gatherings, because it does pack Gecko Hall like sardines sometimes. So we have lots of parents that come to this. And matter of fact, it's such a big celebration that we cannot do it all in one night. And sometimes we can only have 2 grade levels come at a time. And even with 2 grade levels at a time, we still have a packed house. So it's a really exciting event. Parents love it. The kids love it. It exhausts our teachers. We love it. It exhausts us too. But it's a great celebration and a very positive event that we have at our school that's built on our core values, and that is respecting and learning about other cultures. Monique, did you want to say something about that one? Okay, I'll go ahead and move on. We also want to make sure that the instruction in the class is student-centered. So we want it to be creative and engaging. What we never want to see is that students sit down all the time and they're just doing practice book pages on their own and completing one page after another page after another page. And that's not a curriculum that's going to excite them or get them engaged. We want them working collaboratively with their groups. We want small groups and independent learning to be mixed together. So when we do get back to class, that's another thing you're going to see in the instruction is these dynamic movements of students so that they get to experience all different types of learning. And it's not just students sitting at desks listening to a teacher and completing a page, but it's conversations and collaboration and building projects together. Our HDLA events, or the events that guide us through the years, and you can expect to see these probably not this year, but in the coming years, are Day of the Dead, which all classes create a display on aspects of Day of the Dead. We have a winter program. Each class team performs 2 songs, one in Spanish and one in English, and presents it to the families. We invite them for that event. Chinese New Year, which is a school parade. Students come dressed and each class creates something for the parade. We have an international night, which I just explained to you, an in-depth study of one country followed by an informal presentation. We have Noche de Música, which we didn't get to do this year, and that's an evening event for just the adults with dining and auction, and that money raises money for our science camp and several other field trips that we go on. And I think that this year will be the one year that may not happen, and then we'll jump back into it next year. Although next year we're going to have to go even bigger because we're going to have to figure out maybe how to get the kids that missed it this year and as well as the kids that should go next year all to get to go. So we're going to have a lot of makeup work to do when this is all over. We hold a fall festival, which is in October, and that's an evening event for our families where they come in. Each class has a booth of some sort, and students may wear costumes if they choose to, and they come in and they participate in that. There's usually music and lots going on that evening. We have a winter dance, and the entire school is invited to that, including families, and it's usually another packed house and a big event. Middle school dances are for middle school students only so that they can have an event that feels like it's for them or set for them. And then we also have a science fair, which is every 2 years, and our next science fair will be in 2022. It was actually the science fair was the last thing that we did right before we closed down for the coronavirus. So we did get to have our 2020 fair, and we'll have to see what 2022 holds in store for us. Well, another part of our program is assessment and accountability. So how do you take all these pieces and put them together and watch to see how effective they are? One of the things that's important to us is that our students have a growth mindset, because this is not an easy program, especially when they're learning all of their Common Core curriculum in 2 languages. We assess in both languages, and we want to know our impact through what types of assessments we're giving. For example, in 2019, here's how our middle schools did in their CAS score. So this report just happens to have middle. I could have included some other grades in this, but just for the simplicity, I have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And 6th, 7th, and 8th grade tends to be when the model truly comes to form and our students become really strong bilingual, biliterate students. And you start to see that transference in what they're doing on in their assessment data. Since I have been in this school, I have seen only test scores like this consistently every single year. It's like a miracle that takes place and then it repeats itself over and over again. And you know, it can't just be, it's got to be true. It's not just a miracle, but it sure does seem like it when you look at the data. So our 6th grade was 64% on grade level, where the district was 46 and the state of California was 50% on grade level. Our 7th grade class was 71% on grade level, where the district was 50 and the state was at 51. And our 8th grade class was at 82%, met or exceeded grade level, where the district was at 49 and the state was at 49. So when you look at that, you realize something's going on here. Our kids are not any different than any of the other kids, but they're making great progress and they're showing great results in their test scores. And to us, one of the things I think of, or to me, one of the things I think of that makes the biggest difference is that the students just have to work harder to do a program like this. And it encourages their brains to think in creative ways and to solve problems, so that maybe if a student is reading a paragraph and they don't understand something, they can relate it to Spanish, or they can relate it to the strategies that they use when they don't understand, because they're so used to doing that in the other language that when we're doing that in English, it just comes naturally. But for whatever reason, we know that dual language programs have great results for students academically by the time they reach the middle school level. It's exciting. One of the ways we celebrate their bilingualism and their biliteracy is through an award called Pathway Award. And this little one in the middle right here, that's my oldest daughter. She's now a senior in high school. And the Pathway Award is a continuum to the seal of biliteracy in high school. It's the first step of bilingualism and biliteracy, and it's given to our eighth grade students who successfully meet the criteria, which our eighth graders already got their assembly on how they're going to get their Pathway Awards. It has very specific requirements, and it's recognized at the end of every year. It is the most esteemed award any student can get at the Dual Language Academy. They have to get A's and B's in the first semester. They cannot get anything below a D. They can do volunteer hours. They have to pass a writing test, and then they have to pass an oral interview. So it's a pretty stringent process to pass it. And yet last year we had 46 students that made it. We have many students every single year that go for it and make it. So it's really exciting to see them succeed in something. When we set the bar this high and they make it, it is it's always awesome. Staff quality and professional development, that's you. So when we're thinking about the staff and who we hire, you're specially selected. We needed you. We want you because we want people that want to be here, and we want people that see our school as a school where you would want your children to attend. When I was a second grade teacher here, I had my own children in my class. Mrs. Ruiz had her children in a dual language school. Mrs. Solis has her children already here and they're starting. We have so much passion about what we do. We want to be the school where we want our own children, and we want you to have that same mentality. We want you to be the teachers and the staff that are in this school where you would want your own kids to go, which I know is already the case, but I get so excited. So I get a little passionate about this. But our staff is we have, well, the first picture, I don't, Mrs. Ruiz put this in here, but she said great teachers. And then there's a picture of Senora Lane and people who started making the school. They have high expectations for students and passion about dual language programs. We have local dual language teachers who came to build the school they wish they had grown up with. They wanted as their own school. And we have visiting teachers from Spain. These are staff that bring high levels of language and diversity to our program, and we're so excited when we can have a teacher from overseas. So if you do get a chance to meet those teachers, please reach out to them, introduce yourself to them, and meet them, because they came all the way across the pond to be here with us at our school, and it's a great honor for us to have them here. Our teaching commitment, as you know, if you're at the dual language program, this is not an easy program to teach in. Teachers work here and they do double time. So you do double grading. If a regular teacher would have one class of maybe 25 students, and then they would have to give one grade to each one of those 25 students in language arts. You have two classes of 25 students. You're expected to give a grade to each one of those students. That would be 50 grades in language arts. And then in math, the same thing. And then in science, well, this year we don't have science and social studies, but you get what I mean, that you're grading for every single student in every single subject. And so we don't go through and say, oh, your grades are only going to be from your English teacher and your grades are only from your Spanish teacher. Your grades come from both teachers. And when they get the report card, students will get the report card. It will have a Spanish side and it will have an English side with all the grades from Spanish and all the grades in English. And what you're going to find out when you're looking at that report card is that a student may have a concept in Spanish, but they don't yet have it in English. And that's important for us to remember, because when we know that they have it in one language, then we know that the other language is developing into it, but they do understand that concept. So it helps us to see the full picture of the child and know what they're really capable of. District assessments, when we give a district assessment, we don't just give it to one class or the other class, we give it to both groups. So we want both groups to take the English assessment, whatever it is. If you have PAF, we want them all to take the PAF in English. So if you're the English teacher, you're giving your PAF to all your English students. But what if you're the Spanish teacher? Well, then what are you doing? So you're giving your Spanish assessment to all your students too. And how many students is that? That's a lot of students. And so we look to some support from our, we try to be creative, first of all, on how we get all that done, because we know it's hard. So we look at how we can build the schedule to make it easier for you to do that. We look from support from our intervention team on getting that done. If it's one-on-one assessments, the other assessments, we give them to all students and students know that they're to take them. So for example, if you are in a fourth grade class and you have to take your fourth grade ELA test, your benchmark test, guess what? You're going to take it ELA, and you're going to take it SLA, meaning you're going to take it in English and you're going to take it in Spanish equally, and the teacher's going to look at those two scores. Each teacher is going to analyze their scores to see how you've done. Report cards are in both languages. So when you do your report cards, you'll be completing a report card for each of your students in both sections. Conferences. Now, you've already had some conferences, but when we meet for conferences, we meet as teams together. The reason why we meet together for conferences because parents will have questions for both of you, and you'll want to be together for that so that you can answer both. It also shows the equality in the team and the equality within your team so that you're there together as a team, and it's not just about the English class and it's not just about the Spanish class, but you both have equal amount of time to talk to the parents during conferences. And parent communications. When you're sending out an email to your parents, when your parents come and they ask you questions about something, be sure to CC your partner or talk to your partner before you respond so that you're always on the same page with communications. And that's going to help you with your partner relationship because you and your partner, as you're starting to learn, are a very tight team. So if you're in the TK through fifth grade program, you and your partner work step together. There's a lot of planning that goes into something like this. It doesn't just happen in sometimes in one Wednesday planning session when we're getting started. So I know I heard a story about Gabriela. Her team had asked her to meet after hours, and so I know that it happens where the teams kind of get behind a little bit when it comes to planning and getting things together. And I will tell you that the planning piece is a big piece too, but teams get more efficient. They get more efficient and they're able to fit it into the time once they get into the system of knowing which pieces fit into the curriculum in which ways. HDLA teachers do receive a 3% extra stipend on their salary for compensation for the extra responsibilities that they take on when they do a dual language program, which to me is never enough. Family and community. So how do we make it happen? That big, huge job that I just told you about, you're probably thinking right now you want to quit and just go to a different program because it would be much easier. But one of the things that makes it easier for you is the commitment of the family and the community. So parents are asked to volunteer 30 hours per family member per year. And our Parents Club is very strong and they support our teachers and they also support with field trips. So one of the questions that many people have is, well, let me go back to this parent volunteer piece. So when we're talking about the parent volunteers, what we do is we try to get those parents into the classroom. We let them know they're invited in the classroom. We never want to be that school where parents are shut out. We always open our door to them and invite them in as long as they're not interfering with your instruction, because there may be a few parents that do tend to interfere. But those parents that come in and they want to help you, they want to support you, make sure you have something for them to do. Make sure you keep them busy and you let them know how much you appreciate them. I usually have a stack of something that I need to have done. Can you take this and make these, whatever it is, make copies, sharpen pencils, put these in order, cut out this like shape 50 times for my next couple lessons next week, and so on and so forth. So if you have a stack of things that you need parents to do, and then you send it out to your parents in your communication that you have work for them, they will come in, and they do. And the more they come in, the more they're in your classroom and part of that community that you've built within your room, the more that they become a partner with you in their child's education and they see you as being part of their team. And I think that really in the end, it's probably one of the secret ingredients of our school. And that is that our parents are part of everything we do. They're critical. And with them, our students feel like this is where they should be. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they feel that support and that togetherness, which I think is so important. So how do families get into HDLA and how do kids get into HDLA? First of all, they have to attend a bilingual presentation, and at that presentation and only at that presentation, a packet is given. During that presentation, we explain the details of the 50-50 model, and we demonstrate what sheltering looks like and how it works, and we answer questions. Then there's an application for district registration that has to be finished, and then all those names go into a lottery. And from the lottery, the students are selected for the program. So the new TK Kinder orientation generally happens in a regular school right before the school year. Oops. So one of the things I didn't mention, excuse me, which is really interesting, is when we pull the lottery, a third of the kids, we break the school into three, or we break the students into three different sections, and they have to be assessed before they can go into their ticket, can go into the lottery. So we assess them to see if they're Spanish dominant, English dominant. Well, we don't have to assess them for being English dominant, but if they say they're Spanish dominant, we assess them. If they say they're bilingual, we assess them. So we want to know if they're truly Spanish dominant, no English, truly bilingual in both languages. And then we take those three buckets, if you would, and we pull a third of the students out of the Spanish dominant. Excuse me, a third of the students out of the bilingual, and a third of the students out of the English dominant bucket. And so to finish our lottery, we have a school that's our balance, third, a third, and a third. And I think this year we had, actually, our TK program was filled, and we don't have a waiting list. We were able to fill it exactly with the number of applicants, and I think we had maybe 100. Every year it's about 100 on the waiting list for kinder, so that number looks to be about the same. And people are not happy when they don't get into the program, but we try to make it as fair as possible, and we make it public so that people know that the students that get into the program are only the ones that go through this application process and put their name on the list. Now, the only students that do get in the program that do not go through the lottery are your children. So staff member children automatically get into the program, and they're the only ones that automatically get into the program. If you're putting all this time into a program like HDLA, then you should have your kids here too. And if we believe in our model that this is a place where your kids can be, then we need to open it up for that too and make sure that your kids can attend.
Jen, Jen, I noticed two things that it took me, I think, 2 full years to realize. And one is that our split is 50-50, but TK is 80-20.
No, TK is 50-50.
Well, I thought they had a different split when I first came. The other thing is that I know people in the community have asked me, oh, well, can my child join at 4th grade or 5th grade? And I know the reason why, but could you give us the official? They have to transfer from a similar program?
This is true. Yeah. So Monique, did you want to answer that one, or do you want me to answer that one? She has such a great, eloquent way of answering this question.
I can answer it. Well, I do. I don't know. I don't think I have an eloquent any more than you do. So the reason why, so language is acquired over time, just like we have 5-year-olds that start school more or less at 5, because it takes that long for them to develop their first language. You can't accelerate that very well. I mean, I'm sure some of those programs out there, you know, like what a Babbel and things like that, they say, oh, we can learn a language in a month, but that's just not so. And so because language is acquired over time, and we all know, because many of us in this meeting are language learners, I think I've told you guys, some of you before, Spanish is my 3rd language, Portuguese was my 2nd, and English my 1st. And when I learned Portuguese, I was immersed and I didn't have any background. And it was, I remember and know how long it took me to get my social language first. And then, you know, over the years, I developed quite a good academic level of language. But now I haven't spoken it for, I don't know, 35 years on a daily basis like I did for a long time. And so there's a difference between language that a lot of parents say, oh, well, my kid speaks Spanish at home and with grandma and everything, but he's been speaking, I call it the language of love, the family language, the social language, but he's not necessarily learning the hard vocabulary that we all still are learning as teachers in the classroom when we're talking about. And so we're very careful on who we allow to add into the program. We make some exceptions based on individual stories, but generally speaking, the only kids that come in at a higher grade level besides kinder or 1st grade, and that doesn't usually happen in 1st grade just because we have such a strong interest in full classes that we rarely have room and go down the waiting list and in the younger grades. But as life happens, people move away or things change, and there are openings later on. We typically take our Spanish speaking newcomers because we feel that at least we can give them half of their day in their native language and continue to develop that. And so we actually have had some great success stories. One of our valedictorian this last year from 8th grade was a late comer. I don't remember if he came in 5th or 6th grade, and his language was beautiful, and but he had a super strong base in his Spanish, very literate family and strong support. So that's why, like, you may, Polly and Priscilla may come upon a newcomer, in their class, in their day. Mahalia and may not have that situation, or May's in the other school, but just because, we have to learn language before we can assess and find out if there's learning differences. So that doesn't happen very often. But just so you know, we take it very seriously, and it's a big responsibility. And every time, pretty much right now, it still comes through me because we try to funnel things like big decisions like that in a narrow place, because we can speak to the family and have that, make those decisions thoughtfully rather than have some sort of policy that's black and white. But anyway, I don't know. That's what you wanted, Jen. That's what I got.
Thank you, Monique.
Okay.
Yeah, and so final words. I just wanted to share the research behind our program. Top and center here is the 7 steps to success in dual language immersion, and we also followed several books, but many of them, like the Dual Language Instruction, a handbook for enrichment and education, and Dual Language Essentials for teachers and administrators. If there's anything here that you're interested in, mostly when you look at this list, Gomez Freeman is one of our key pieces of research that we follow, and that's Dual Language Education, a Promising 50/50 Model Bilingual Research Journal. So that just a little bit more information if you're interested in it, because now that you're part of it, you're part of not just a school, you're actually part of a movement that you didn't even realize maybe when you got here that you were part of it. But it's big, and if you are wanting to read more about it or learn more about it, let me know, because I can share some books with you. I know when I first got here, I read 2 just to find out more about it, because I was interested as a side note in what we were getting into and the research behind it, and we'd be glad to share that with you. But we are honored that you're here with us. Thank you for joining us in what we do, and we are also would want to make sure that we're going to support you in every way. So I'm going to stop our video recording right now and answer some questions.